Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel for a brand new episode of How to Not Suck at Star Wars Battlefront 2. Today we'll be taking another look at a character that a surprising amount of people have been asking for, that being the Senate himself, Sheev Palpatine. Be sure to let me know in the comment section down below which hero you'd like to see next on this series, and as always be sure to leave a like if you do enjoy these guides, as these hero guides take me a very long time to put together and reach a smaller audience, so it's you guys leaving likes and support to keep this series alive. That being said, the Emperor is one of the, if not the single most unique villain in Battlefront 2, and as such requires a very different playstyle that is entirely unique to him. When I first covered the Emperor around the launch of the game, he was in a very different place compared to where he is now. At launch, and by launch I mean like the first month or so post-release, Palpatine was widely regarded as among the worst heroes in all of Battlefront 2. His stamina was very low, his lightning had trouble connecting with targets, and overall he was just a hero most players stayed far away from. Well, DICE heard these complaints really early on and buffed Palpatine several times in a row right away over the course of 3 updates, eventually making Palpatine so powerful and downright broken that he had to be removed from Battlefront 2 altogether for a short time. Nowadays, after a lot of balancing, Palpatine seems to be a hero that many players struggle with, yet at the same time he is the first choice of many others, myself included. In this guide, I will be teaching you how to dominate the battlefront as Emperor Palpatine, and we'll be covering everything you'll ever need to know about Sheev, from his stats to his best star cards, and by the end of this video you should be well equipped to be an unstoppable force. Let's begin by covering Palpatine's health and damage statistics as well as his basic movement capabilities. Palpatine has a base health of 700 HP, which is very middle of the road and something I wouldn't consider a strength or a weakness. While Palpatine never feels like a hero that can tank a lot of damage, he never feels like a glass cannon either. His health is very appropriate for his playstyle. His base health regen is also extremely average, sitting at 250 HP, with a health regen delay of 5 seconds and a regeneration speed of 75 HP per second, which means after losing health, he will begin healing after a 5-second delay at a rate of 75 HP per second. When it comes to Palpatine's movement, well, this is where the Emperor really begins to shine. Palpatine has 2 available dash charges at any given time, the same as nearly every other unit in Battlefront 2, the difference being Palpatine's forward dash is easily among the best, if not the single best dash in the entire game. His forward dash sends him twirling ahead, covering an incredible distance and making Palpatine a very difficult target to damage. In fact, Palpatine's forward dash was more or less its own ability in Battlefront 2015 with a pretty lengthy recharge, but in this game it's just available to you as a standard dash. It should be noted that Palpatine's side and backward dashes do not share the strength of the forward dash, and instead are very standard side and reverse dashes that will not give you anywhere near the same distance. Palpatine's jump allows him to reach the same heights as other Force users, but much like Vader, he descends very slowly, which can leave him open to heavy damage from enemies with decent aim. However, before we get into how Palpatine's movement is best utilized, we first need to discuss his basic attack and abilities. Palpatine's primary weapon is his Force Lightning, and Palpatine is the only non-lightsaber hero in Battlefront 2 that has the luxury of not really needing to aim, as his primary attack locks on enemies and deals steady damage over time. His lightning can be used with either one hand or two, as holding down one trigger will allow Palpatine to deal less damage but for a much longer time, while using both hands will deal double the damage while draining Palpatine's stamina at a much faster rate. With one hand, Palpatine deals 45 damage per second, which he can sustain for 14 seconds, and using both he will deal 90 damage per second, which can be sustained for half the time at 7 seconds. However, and this is something I rarely see pointed out even in other Palpatine hero guides, his one-handed lightning arcs to multiple players, and will deal damage to more than one enemy at the same time, while his two-handed lightning will focus on a single target and drain only their health at twice the rate, much quicker than the single-handed attack. I think a lot of players just think his one-handed attack is completely pointless. It's not, it does serve a purpose, but even with that being said, the majority of the time you're going to want to use his two-handed attack. If you're going up against a large group of enemies, it is not going to do you any good to have a large group of low health enemies that you've chipped away at with his one-handed attack. They will all still be able to melt you even if they have 1 HP. The much better bet is to kill them all in quick succession with his two-handed lightning attack, which luckily is very quick to move from target to target after each has been killed. I almost exclusively reserve Palpatine's one-handed attack if I'm trying to scare enemies off over a long period of time. The extra stamina will let you hold a door pretty much infinitely if you are up against a team that isn't too aggressive, but other than that, his two-handed lightning is going to serve you far better in most scenarios. Palpatine's abilities, and one in particular, are also completely essential to understanding how to optimize his movement and basic attacks. So before we get into general strategy, we need to cover his Chain Lightning, Dark Aura, and Electrocute. Let's start off with Chain Lightning, which is undoubtedly Palpatine's strongest ability. Chain Lightning is very easy to understand and allows Palpatine to send out a quick surge of Force Lightning that will bounce to nearby targets, dealing 120 damage each. Even without Dark Heart upgrades, Chain Lightning is capable of bouncing to 3 more targets for a total of 4, which is going to be more than enough for 95% of situations. This ability has a 15-second cooldown without upgrades, which is a fairly lengthy cooldown for an ability like this, but Chain Lightning has some really great star cards that really help the ability out when it comes to cooldown, which is something we'll discuss a little later on in the video. Because Chain Lightning does not kill any units in Battlefront 2 in a single shot, it is best used after weakening up enemies, and then using Chain Lightning to seal the deal. His second ability is Electrocute, and of Palpatine's 3 abilities, this is definitely both his weakest, as well as the one that is least essential to his overall playstyle. That being said, Electrocute does still have many uses that we'll get into. Electrocute allows Palpatine to send out a wall of electricity, which stuns players who fall in its path. Electrocute has a relatively short duration, stunning enemies for just 1 second. On top of that, Electrocute has a very lengthy animation that leaves Palpatine very vulnerable, and in fact, Electrocute's animation is longer than the stun itself. One of the core issues with Electrocute is the animation, because while a 1 second stun does sound very short, it's actually longer than both Iden and Chewbacca's. But even with that in mind, the end of the Electrocute animation interferes and overlaps with Palpatine's Electrocute active stun time, so while the ability will stun enemies for a total of a full second, by the time Palpatine gets out of his animation and is actually able to attack the enemies, he has just over half a second before the ability will completely wear off, which is far less than any other hero with a stun. Electrocute also has a 20-second recharge, which is a relatively high recharge time considering just how short the stun itself is. The ability can also be blocked or dodged, which can make the ability feel somewhat unreliable, and as such, I do not recommend trying to electrocute more than a couple of enemies at a time, unless you are completely sure the area is completely clear and you'll be hitting every intended target, because if not, you are just setting yourself up for a Vanguard blast to the face. Electrocute is best used on enemies who have their backs turned to you, as it will give you an extra half second to lower their health before they are able to turn around and begin damaging you. The ability is generally not worth using on standard non-buff troopers, because in my opinion, any trooper is going to be able to be killed fast enough that it's just not worth the risk. I generally use Electrocute on reinforcements and heroes only. For blaster heroes, as I said, you're best off using it when they have their back to you, and against lightsaber heroes you need to make absolutely sure that you have an appropriate distance between their saber and you before activating the ability. Because if a saber hits you while you are mid-activation, the ability will cancel in the middle of the animation, and you will be left with a saber to the face. Electrocute does have a star card that makes it a much better ability for HVV that we'll discuss later, but know that using this ability comes with more than a few risks. Moving on to Palpatine's third and final ability, we have Dark Aura. This ability has a recharge time of 25 seconds, which other than Phasma's turret after detonation is the longest ability recharge in the game, tied with a few others like Bosk's Predator Instincts, and a couple others that also have 25-second recharges. However, this ability has a lengthy active time of 8 seconds, and creates a full electrified 360-degree area of effect around Palpatine that will damage all enemies at a rate of 15 HP per second, and in addition slows their movement down to a crawl while preventing them from jumping or dodging. This ability is pretty much perfect for Palpatine's playstyle. Just by the nature of the Senate's primary attack and Chain Lightning, he nearly always has to deal with low HP enemies that haven't been quite finished off, but need to be killed. Dark Aura is great for taking the final HP from enemies you may not even be necessarily paying attention to, while also disorienting those around you, which in turn prevents them from shooting you as they try to escape the ability in a panic. It's also excellent for getting lightsaber heroes off of your back and keeping them from getting too close, which in HVV is pretty much the most important thing you can do. Another very important use of Dark Aura is preventing low health heroes from beginning to regenerate, as like previously mentioned, Dark Aura is completely unblockable, and keeping a saber hero within the area of effect will completely stop them from regaining any lost health. The ability does have a rather long animation time, but because it is an AoE ability that can be activated before going into a battle, this really isn't an issue. Just be sure to activate the ability behind cover or at the very least when safely positioned, and then rush in to combat the enemy team. A Palpatine with Dark Aura active and Chain Lightning ready to go can clear out an objective in seconds, and strategically choosing when and where to activate Dark Aura can be the difference between a great Palpatine player and a really bad one. Anyway, now that we've covered Palpatine's abilities, let's go over his best star card setup for each game mode the Emperor is available in. Starting off with Galactic Assault, this setup is an absolute no-brainer, at least in my opinion. The first card I am going to recommend you equip is Lightning Reach, and this star card gives Palpatine 30% extra range on his standard lightning attacks. This star card is right up my alley in terms of the type of upgrade I usually go for, as Lightning Reach improves Palpatine in pretty much every situation. The additional range allows you to begin damaging enemies much earlier when rushing, it's going to make finishing off fleeing enemies far easier, and when pushing up on objectives, especially ones that are exposed, you are going to need to start picking off enemies surrounding you as soon as possible, as you aren't going to make it out of that situation alive if there are tons shooting at you that you are not damaging. Trust me, this card makes a huge difference for Palpatine, especially on maps filled with medium to long range engagements. The second card I'm going to recommend in Galactic Assault is In Full Control, another card that upgrades Palpatine's standard lightning attacks, but instead of increasing the range, this one buffs his stamina by 16%, meaning he can use Force Lightning for a longer duration, and for someone like Palpatine this is very important, and is a star card I will never unequip. The extra stamina is going to help ensure you are never left defenseless in the middle of combat, and is going to secure you a lot of extra kills every game, whether you are aware of it or not. Finally, for his third and final card in Galactic Assault, I recommend Show No Mercy. This star card drastically reduces the cooldown of Chain Lightning once you've hit enough targets with the ability to a maximum of a 5-second reduction, bringing the recharge of Chain Lightning down to just 10 seconds. This card is incredible, only 20 targets need to be hit in a life to fully max out the cooldown reduction, and the effect will stay in place until you either die or the game ends. This is without a doubt his best and most versatile setup for Galactic Assault, and just to summarize, the three cards I highly suggest you equip for GA are In Full Control, Show No Mercy, and Lightning Reach. Moving over to Heroes vs Villains, things get a little more complicated. If you are playing against a pretty bad team, and a match where you can stay alive the entire time, I am going to recommend the same exact setup as Galactic Assault. The extra range and stamina are just as useful in hero modes as they are in GA, while Show No Mercy and the reduced chain lightning time is amazing if you are able to stay alive the entire match, or at least the majority of it. However, Show No Mercy is a star card that requires you to stay alive over a long period of time just to fully benefit from the upgrade, and as such is not worth using if you are playing against a really good team where you find yourself dying often, because every time you die, the effect completely resets and you start over from scratch. In that case, I'm going to recommend a different card entirely, that being the Rule of Two. This card gives Palpatine the ability to deal 30% extra damage with his two-handed lightning attack to enemies that are electrocuted by your electrocute, which is going to make that ability far more effective and much more worth the trouble that can come with using it. For Hero Showdown, your best star card setup is going to be In Full Control, Lightning Reach, and the Rule of Two. Show No Mercy will essentially give you no benefit in this game mode, as each round is far too short to build up a lower recharge time. If you need to reference this video again to confirm the best star card setups, I will have all of them in the description below. Finally, I do want to give an honorable mention to one last star card that is very situational, but might be worth equipping in a few situations. The card I am referencing is Surge of Lightning, and this card increases the amount of targets that Chain Lightning can bounce to by 4, bringing his total up to 8. Now, in Heroes vs Villains and Hero Showdown, this is completely useless, as Chain Lightning can already strike 4 without any upgrades, and there are 4 or less enemies in both of those modes. However, in Galactic Assault, this can be nice at times. However, I really only recommend equipping it over one of the other recommended cards in a few situations. If you get Palpatine late in the game, something like Phase 3 of Naboo, where enemies are often very closely bunched together, it can be a good idea to swap out the extra range star card for Surge of Lightning, only because the extra range is not going to be much of a help in tight quarters like that, and the extra chain lightning hits could score you a sweet multi-kill. However, and I do want to stress this, as a general rule, the extra range, stamina, and reduced lightning recharge is going to serve you by far the best in most situations, as the amount of times you come across more than 4 enemies bunched close enough together for chain lightning to bounce to are going to be far and few between, so only equip Surge of Lightning if you are in a situation like described, or you're just trying to have fun with a new setup. Alright, now that we have the Emperor's star cards out of the way, let's discuss general strategy. As mentioned earlier, by far Palpatine's greatest asset is his movement. Staying on the move at all times is absolutely essential to using Palpatine effectively, and as such you need to utilize his dash and jump at all times. Unless the enemy is just not paying attention, you should never attack while just standing in place. Use your primary attack and abilities while in the air, as that will make life much more difficult for enemies who are trying to damage you. A lot of his strategy was touched on earlier in the video, but Palpatine in Galactic Assault needs to be used as a hit and run hero. Just activate Dark Aura if it's available, push into an objective or group of enemies, weaken them with your basic attack, use Chain Lightning to kill as many as you can, and then finish off those with low health with your Force Lightning, and then if your team has pushed forward with you, stay on the front lines, but if not and you are by yourself, you need to get out of there and then do it again when Chain Lightning is off recharge. Palpatine can be easily melted when he is on his own as he has really no defense. His defense is making himself as hard of a target to hit as humanly possible because unlike his Battlefront 2015 counterpart, Palpatine is unable to block. In Heroes vs Villains and Hero Showdown, by far the best way to use Palpatine is by getting into ongoing engagements as often as possible. Lightsaber heroes can easily block Palpatine's Force Lightning altogether, but a lightsaber hero who is already in combat is going to have their back to you, and by the time they know what is going on, they'll either be dead or very low on health, in which case a quick Dark Aura activation will take care of that. Palpatine can be countered by the enemy team pretty quickly by throwing a good Finn or Obi-Wan player into the mix. Obi-Wan can disable your abilities and dash, which for Palpatine can be dealt with somewhat easily by jumping, but Finn's Deadeye is very deadly to Palpatine, and unlike Boba Fett, Palpatine really has no way of escaping it quickly, so watch out for Finn. The best way to deal with him is by equipping the Rule of 2 in HVV, electrocuting him as fast as humanly possible and just killing him before he gets the chance to activate Deadeye, because once it's active you are guaranteed to lose a huge chunk of health or just die altogether if you are targeted and unable to find cover quickly. Overall though, Palpatine is one of the best and most versatile heroes in all of Battlefront 2. And for those of you who struggle to master him, I hope this guide was able to get you up to speed, as I really do believe he is a very easy hero to pick up once you understand the basics. As always, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like. These guides take far longer than my regular uploads and reach a smaller audience, so it's you guys leaving the likes that keep this series alive. Be sure to let me know in the comment section down below which hero you'd like to see in the next hero guide, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I'm